Okay, everybody. Welcome to my presentation. This is the first of the Tech at Home presentations here at Landis Homes, and my name is Tyler Jamison. This is going to be on phishing scams and general scamming security. So, first, we're just going to talk about the topics we're going to go over today. So, first thing is, what is phishing? That's probably a question a lot of you might have. You've probably heard the word thrown out before, but we're going to cover everything in detail. We're going to go over the many different types of phishing that are available, and that gets thrown around quite a lot. Some common examples of phishing that you might see day to day. Some common tricks that scammers will use. How to stay safe from these phishing scams. And then we're going to do a short Q&A session with any questions you guys might have. So, what is phishing? Phishing is when somebody will use deceiving messages or even a fake website to make you do something that will benefit them. So, some examples of things that a scammer might want out of you, something that would benefit them. They might want to steal your personal information. They might want your passwords because identity theft is such a big problem right now. They might want you to download malicious programs on your computer, or they could exert more force on you. They could try to remotely access your computer. And then probably the biggest one is they want you to transfer your money. That's the biggest financial goal that they would have, is to take all of the money you have. So, we're going to talk about some brief statistics on phishing. So, this is from 2 years ago, but this is still pretty true. Microsoft, Google, and Yahoo, probably the three biggest brands, they are by far the most impersonated. So, if you have somebody claiming to be from these big companies, it's best to keep an eye of caution out. So, there is over 5 million fake phishing websites. So you guys probably do visit a lot of websites if you're on your computers or mobile devices. You could very easily navigate to one of these fake websites in which they might have more malicious goals behind them. In 2023, 71% of companies experienced a successful phishing attack. That is a pretty astronomical number and not something that most people realize happens on a quite common basis. The companies you interact with and you might trust do get phished and hit with the same exact scams that you might as an individual. Over 3 billion phishing emails are sent out daily. So that's over 2 million per minute, and that is a pretty mind-numbing fact. If you printed that out on an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper for each and every phishing email, that would be about 350 miles of paper every single minute, or about 6 miles every second. And then, just because of the community that we're in, it's important to note that individuals over the age of 60 or even further are statistically the most vulnerable group to these types of scams because you guys have not been around it for that long. So, the types of phishing that we're about to take a look at, and this is by no means a comprehensive list, but we would be going through the most common one, which would be email phishing. Then there would be targeted phishing, which is much more common in a corporate environment. Website phishing, which is where they fake a website. Pop-up phishing, which is where they put something on your screen for you to click on or interact with. And then voice phishing, where they attempt to reach out to you through voice communications. So, first starting off with a little more in-depth about email phishing, because that's by far the most common one. So, the most common way that a scammer would send out these is through use of an automated program. There are many out there, and although they are a little more tech savvy to be able to use, these are by no means very sophisticated attacks. They may have email addresses that they can fake that would be almost identical to the reputable brands that you trust on a daily basis. Like I said, this is in general a more low skill attack. It doesn't take a lot of technical know-how. It doesn't take a cybersecurity expert to put out these kind of attacks. And they're usually done with sort of general statements that could be targeted really at anybody. Most often, the goal of these email phishing scams is for you to click on a link within this email, or they want you to reply with some personal or financial information. So, a way you can recognize suspicious emails is through the use of the sender's address. So, if you have used email for any amount of time, you realize that to communicate back and forth, you need the recipient and the sender to have an email address. The email address will consist of two parts, and by no means do you have to really memorize this, but the first part of the email would be their username, and the second part of the email would be the domain name. In general, when you're communicating with most, even medium to large businesses, they will have their own professional domain. And here behind me, I have two pretty good examples of both a good and a bad email address. So the good email address, their username is John Doe. And then the professional business domain would be landis.org. This is not a real employee here, but this is just something for example. And then an example of a bad email address is this username, which is just sort of a random jumble of characters, which I have seen quite a few times on fake phishing emails. And then at gmail.com. Gmail.com, in sort of congruence with Comcast and Yahoo, they're not necessarily a professional email domain. That's something usually you can get for free and done on a personal level. So it's fine if you're getting communications with friends or family from that kind of domain, but if they're reaching out pretending to be a business, it's usually a good word of caution to really bring up some red flags there. So email addresses, even ones that look good, can be made using letters from other languages. So even if it looks exactly right, and this might be a little hard to see, the image is a little blurry, but we have two emails here, fake on the left and real on the right. And these email addresses look almost identical, but they are true emails. Both of these were sent to somebody's inbox, but the one on the left uses a fake letter O from another language. And the computer will see these addresses as technically different, even though to you as the user, they look the same. So although we can use a sort of less professional looking email address as a way to say something looks fishy or it looks a little more suspicious, you can't go the other way around. If it looks really, really good and the email address looks fine, it doesn't mean the email will be true. So the next type of phishing, targeted phishing. This is not something that you guys would probably interact with much on a daily basis, but it's still a very, very common type, especially in a business environment. Targeted phishing is something attacked at one specific person or a very small group. This is often targeted to like the CEO of a company or someone they know to have a large financial burden. So scammers will do research, and they can skim the internet very easily for personal details on pretty much anybody they want, using free or very cheap tools. These messages, they will pose as a credible person, maybe from the same organization that these individuals would typically trust. And quite by and large, this is a much more dangerous and believable scam, even for tech-savvy people, and that is why it's most often employed against the people high up in a company. And then targeted phishing is also known as spear phishing, sort of by the image I have behind me. So phishing would be almost like casting a net or a fishing line into water, trying to get anybody who will bite. whereas spearfishing, you are really targeting in on that one fish. So website phishing. This one is a little more sophisticated, but it's something we see way too common in today's era. So a more sophisticated scammer, somebody who knows how to code or make a website, even with some free tools available online, they can learn how to make a website that would steal your information. They may look nearly identical to a reputable brand's website. And some of the most common websites they would impersonate, they could do a banking website. They could do something extremely common like Amazon, like another online retailer, Walmart. These things get impersonated all of the time. So one way you can keep yourself secure against these fake websites is to make sure you're not clicking on sponsored links when you're searching online. And I'll show an image of what that looks like here in 1 second. But website phishing is also known as spoofing. That's a very common term you'll hear. So here behind me, I have a little image of what a sponsored website phish would look like. So this is using the Google Internet browser, and we have a sponsored link. Someone typed in the word Midjourney, which is, I believe, it's some reading platform. But all they did was type in Midjourney in their internet browser, and the very first thing that came up was this sponsored link. It looks totally real, but we see the word sponsored in bold text directly above it. That means somebody, whoever made this website, is paying money to have it brought to the top of the list. And a very common tactic that scammers will use is they'll make these fake websites, and then they will pay for them to be brought to the top of the list. Here's another example of a fake website. Instead of searching, we've actually clicked on the link here. On the left side, we have the real TCF banking website, and on the right, we have the fake TCF banking website. It is almost indistinguishable, these two websites, and unless you had them directly side by side, you would probably not be able to tell them apart. We can see somewhat at the top, the website address is slightly different, but for most people that would not register, so it's best to not get on these websites in the first place. The next type of phishing would be pop-up phishing. So as I said before, pop-up phishing means a fake message would show up on your screen. The goal of pop-up phishing would be for you to click on a malicious download or call a phone number that would lead, of course, right to the scammers. Pop-up blockers are sometimes a decent fix to these types of scams, but in general, it will not always save you. If you cannot find the X or the little closeout icon to get rid of these pop-up messages, it is best to just fully turn off and then turn your computer back on. And then after the computer turns back on, these messages will almost certainly go away. 9 times out of 10, it will have no harm on the computer if you did not interact with those pop-ups in the first place, and then just attempt to not navigate back there again. This can often happen on news websites. Sometimes it will be targeted advertisements. People will pay for these fake advertisements to be put on websites. If you click on it, it'll go right to these pop-up scams. So just in general, good advice, do not follow any instructions from your computer that you did not request. And then here's a sort of fake example of what pop-up phishing would look like in real life. But in general, they'll be even more detailed than this and maybe a little more scary. So in this case, it's trying to tell you you won some bogus cash prize, when in reality, no matter what you clicked on this, it would probably download a program on your computer, which wouldn't be good, of course, or it would entice you into further phishing attempts. So the next type of phishing would be voice phishing. Voice phishing is when scammers will call you or trick you into calling them. And I sort of touched on how some of these get brought up a little bit earlier, like on those pop-up scams. They will most often have a phone number right at the bottom. They're trying to impersonate somebody and have you call that phone number. If you do then answer that phone call, or you call them, they have numerous tricks then to try to get you to disclose that information. They might impersonate a brand that you trust. In general, they won't have a lot of information on you right at the start, but over the course of a long phone call, they can really get a lot of information out of you, even if you don't realize it. They might then request access to your computer. In general, if you do not trust anybody, like absolutely to a T, do not allow them any remote access to your computer. Once they have this access, they could pop up things on your screen, deceive you into giving out financial information. It could really get bad once you let them into your computer. And occasionally, these callers will speak without even any noticeable foreign accent. They will hire people here right in the United States with no foreign accent to be on these phones listening for these calls. And that's a really scary fact. And then voice phishing is also known as vishing. It's a pretty common thing. They just add the word ishing at the end of any sort of phishing scam. So now we're going to go through a couple examples of phishing that you might see in real life. I did throw up a couple pictures throughout those slides, but we're going to dive into a couple ones that you might see on a daily basis, and then a couple that have happened pretty notably in history. So one of the biggest ones and one of the oldest ones ever employed in use is called the Nigerian Prince scam. So the general concept of the Nigerian Prince scam would be a fake foreign money transfer. They are trying to transfer money, they are trying to transfer goods, they have some certain cash prize for you, something to that amount, but they are overseas and they need your help. They usually require your help and then say you would get some percentage of the money, usually the buyout of this scam. Unfortunately, this is, of course, totally false, and they would ask for your banking information. They would ask you to wire over a small portion of the money ahead of time as a deposit, and that would go directly, of course, into the scammers' wallets. So, like I said, this is a pretty old scam. It was used primarily during the beginnings of email, back when not many people had an understanding of what phishing was. Sometimes this was even put through fax. They would get access to your fax numbers, and they would fax a printed out copy of this type of scam. So here I have on the next slide here. This is a little tough to read, so I'm going to read it out for you guys just briefly. But this is a very real faxed Nigerian Prince scam. So, dear sir, which is already very general, we have $30 million US, which we got from an overinflated contract from crude oil awarded to foreign contractors in the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation. We are seeking your assistance and permission to remit this amount into your account. Your commission is 30% of the money. And I sort of skipped over a couple words there because it wasn't perfectly spelled. There is usually grammatical errors in this type of scam. And in general, just like email phishing, this is a very low-skilled type of attack. The next common type of scam you might see on a daily basis would be IRS impersonations. This is especially common during tax season. The IRS will be very commonly impersonated by scammers, and because it's such a reputable brand, someone who would require your information, they really have an easy opportunity to basically get anything they want. Many times people will trust these scams out of fear of fines or even imprisonment. They'll say, hey, we'll send the deputies to your house 7 days from now, 30 days from now, even though the true IRS, as long as you're doing the right stuff, would not have that kind of lien, at least not that quickly. So here's a little piece of information straight off of the IRS's website, irs.gov. 5 things the IRS will never do. The IRS will never contact you by email or text message. The IRS will never call to demand immediate payment using a prepaid debit card, gift card, or wire transfer. The IRS will never demand that you pay taxes without the opportunity to ask questions or to appeal. The IRS will never threaten to bring in local police, immigration, or other agencies to have you arrested, at least certainly not with any short amount of time. And the IRS will never ask you for your credit or debit card numbers over the phone. Next common scam, and I kind of went over a very similar type with that other pop-up scams, is virus pop-up scams. So pretty much all of the virus warnings that you would see are usually fake unless you have access to an antivirus software and you've told this antivirus software, please notify me when there are any threats. So if you have something like Norton, Avast, McAfee, you might want to listen to those if it looks right and it's coming directly from those sources. Pretty much everything else you can pretty easily say is a fake message. So here behind me I have an image warning your computer may be infected, and then in smaller text it gives a little bit of fake technical info and then a phone number to call. So you would never want to call the phone number on these fake virus pop-ups or attempt to click them in any way. You should really attempt to close out the window if possible, or like I said before with pop-up scams, you want to fully restart the computer. Turn it off, wait 30 seconds, and turn it back on. Usually, if this message looks really urgent, we've got red text here, we've got exclamation points, high priority, it's saying priority urgent, you are not safe. Anything like that is usually a red flag when you're looking at this kind of information. If you happen to have a problem that persists with a pop-up or virus pop-up scam, just please let me know. Just call the Tech at Home line that will be listed at the end here. Okay. Another popular scam would be the extended warranty scam. Scammers will call and pretend to offer an extended warranty to you. There are additional warranties you can buy for a lot of your vehicles, but usually they will not contact you to get this information out of you, nor will they attempt to pressure you like this into buying them. So pretty much nobody besides the actual manufacturer of the device can offer or extend a factory warranty. Everything else would either be a scam or some other completely type of warranty. And then here I have a little image of a quick test you can do, and this might be nice to write down. SCAM. SCAM is a good abbreviation. S, seems too good to be true. C, you are contacted out of the blue. A, you are asked for personal details. And M, money is requested. SCAM, S-C-A-M. And then here's one that was fairly recent, caused by phishing. This is the Colonial Oil Pipeline. It was a major United States pipeline in the East Coast that was attacked in May of 2021. An employee's password was phished, probably using targeted phishing like we went over earlier, and they installed a special program on their computers that completely locked down the pipeline. The Colonial Oil Company, they ended up having to pay $5 million in ransom to these foreign hackers. And during that time, before they paid the ransom, the national gas price went up 7 cents per gallon in only a few days. So I'm going to go a little quicker now. We're going to want to be aware of toll scams. This is the last scam type that we're going to go over. Toll scams is where they would usually send this by text message. And I have gotten several of these text messages just this year of people pretending to be from toll agencies asking for payment of unpaid tolls. Immediate payment is almost always requested, and they will threaten penalties or legal action against you. It's best to pretty much safely ignore all of these messages and definitely do not click on any links they might provide you. If you do have unpaid tolls, you can verify those payment requests directly with the toll agencies using official contact information. Okay, so now we're going to go over a couple tricks that scammers will use to employ these phishing scams. So scammers can use a lot of tools. Most of them are free. Most of them are open source and available online or with a very small purchase. They can do a lot of research and know a lot about you before ever beginning an attack. They have automated software that can skim through the web for your information. This would be usually from social media or legal records. Data breaches from companies that you would normally trust. If you made an account with some website many, many years ago, it might be still in the supposedly safe hands of that company, but if that company's security is not up to date, they can get all of that information leaked. And we hear about that a lot. News headlines, millions, billions of dollars being compromised. They could phish your close friends and relatives. Just like you could be phished, so could the people around you. And then with that information, they might use that to be more believable towards you. If you have any social media, that could be used to contain some valuable information. Your close friends, close list of relatives, where you went to school, anything like that could be used as credible information for them to gain access. Some more tricks that they might use. They might make claims that immediate action is needed to avoid penalties or loss. So if you ever see stuff that is using immediate words, urgency, that's usually a bad telltale sign of a scam. They may convince victims to install remote access software, as we mentioned before. They might use tools to alter your screen once they have that remote access. Very common one is once they have remote access, is they will modify your screen. It will make it look like bank transfers are happening even though they are not. They'll say, hey, we sent you too much money. Please refund us $500 or something to that tune. But in reality, that money will just go straight to them. Payment is then often demanded through quite unusual means. Most of the times, if you have never heard of this payment method, it's usually a good idea to not do it. They will try to use cryptocurrency, basically an untrackable form of money. They might often entice you to buy gift cards. I've heard about that happening several times, even in the local area. People will be enticed to buy $500 gift cards and then send them overseas, and it's essentially untrackable. And then who should you trust? Pretty much nobody. That's unfortunately the common theme around here. You can't really trust anybody with these scams. Anyone on the internet can do enough research to impersonate the people you know or the businesses that you interact with. When in doubt, if something seems suspicious, absolutely do not interact with it, no matter who you think it's coming from. Even trusted contacts and businesses, even if they're not being impersonated, they could have been hacked, and then people are using their real email address to send these items to you. And never click any links you did not ask for, even if it comes from a trusted friend. So how do you stay safe? Don't click on those links. Please do not click on any of those links in any of the messages of any form. So always contact companies using websites and phone numbers that you know are real. Use official contact information that you would get on your sort of monthly statements from these companies or any other form of official documentation you have with them. If you have the ability to, use what is known as two-factor authentication. Many might have heard of this method of securing your information, but not everybody will use it. That is usually done when you use your phone or your email address to verify your identity when logging into a website or other type of account. These are extremely important. If somebody gets your password, they would still then not have access to your account unless they would then also have access to that other form of verification. If you believe you have given out sensitive login information, you would then want to change your passwords immediately. And of course, never use the same password more than once. And that will be a topic of next class's presentation. Okay, so now we are ready for the Q&A section. So if anybody in the audience has questions, I think Hunter's coming around with a microphone so that you can ask questions so that people at home can hear. Please keep everything fairly brief and on topic. And then if you don't have any questions, please stick around for some closing remarks. Okay? Does anybody have any questions? Anything at all? Yes, sir. Have him come over with a microphone.
If you're getting a phone call from somebody that you don't recognize the number at all, is there a risk even in answering the phone? And the second, oftentimes if you do answer the phone, they'll say, David, and we don't usually just hang up at that point. But
So what your question was is, when somebody calls in and you don't recognize that phone number, is it safe to answer? And sometimes it is, but in general, if somebody calls you and you do not recognize that phone number, it's usually not safe for you to start off the conversation. There is some pretty sophisticated attacks nowadays where they can record these things that you are saying. So if you answer the phone and say, hello, who is this? This is David or this is Tyler. They now have that as a voice clip of yours, and that's unfortunately a somewhat common thing that will happen. They'll take that voice clip, then call up your buddy and be like, they'll play it back. They'll say, hey, this is David, and they'll use that as the start of the phishing scam. So in general, if you do have to answer the phone for someone you do not trust or you don't recognize the phone number, definitely don't start off the conversation. And then if they do then start responding with information, you want to dig a lot deeper. It should be giving up alarm bells if you did not request this phone call. Okay. Another question?
Sort of a follow-up on the previous question. Is your exposure on a landline the same as on a cell phone or a computer?
So exposure on a landline versus a cell phone, it would be pretty much the same in terms of a phishing attack. On a landline, you do not have the ability to text message. So in that case, technically a landline is then more secure because your landline cannot receive those text messages that they would use as a sort of attack plane that they could use to scam you. But in general, it's voice phishing scams would be the exact same between cell phones and landline phones. Another question?
I've had innumerable calls from people, especially Medicare related. And this is the time when you're supposed to change if you're going to change.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't recognize the phone numbers of my son even. because he works for a company and it's their phone. And also, my other son, I wouldn't recognize it either. He has Jersey phones. But I just say hello and make sure I never answer a question with the word yes, because then they could take that and apply it to something else. And
Yeah.
then I hear what they have to say, and sometimes I will let them go on until they get to the point to say, how old are you? And when I say 91, they click, it's gone. but I've had one phishing scam on my email, and it was from our church. Pictured the pastor and everything, looked like a legitimate site. And he said he was very busy, and he had some ladies in the hospital that were for cancer research, and he needed to give them a little something to encourage them, and asked me to get a gift card for, I think it was $100 or something. And I sent back and I said, I have a better idea. Why don't you take it out of the Love Fund, and then you can reimburse them at your own leisure. And then a few minutes later, we got an actual email from the church, and they told us about this scam.
Yeah. So yeah, that sort of touches on this stuff does happen in real life. Even if it might not happen to you, it will happen to somebody you know. So I'm very glad you shared your story there. And just in general, it's good to keep a careful eye when you're getting anything that sounds suspicious over the phone. Try to dig into these people, see if you can get some sort of logical fallacy out of what they're saying. So if they trip up over their words, information is conflicting, you know for sure it's probably not the real person. And in general, if you don't trust it, you can feel free to hang up the phone at any time. If it's something important, they will call back. Okay. Is there any other questions?
When I delete something, then I'm always asked whether I want it to be labeled as junk. Does that make any difference, or can you just delete it and not have it registered anywhere as scam or whatever?
So most email providers will give you that option to either just normally delete the email or to file it as junk. And it is important, if you do truly recognize it as potentially a fake email, to mark it as junk. So these email providers, they will learn every single email that you say, this is junk. It will try to tailor your inbox and automatically filter those things as junk. Some of them, it might be marked as spam, marked as scam, marked as junk, but a lot of the email providers will have that as a feature. So if you do recognize it as something fake, definitely do file it under junk. Okay. So any last questions before I wrap up here? Going once? Okay. So here I got a little closing remarks. So thank you all for coming into the first Tech at Home class here at Landis Homes. I know we didn't have the greatest weather this morning, so I hope more can attend on the next one. The next class topic will be on password management and security. So that presentation is partially completed at this point. But if you have suggestions for upcoming classes, I am all ears, and I'd be more than happy to hear any suggestions you guys have. For now, all future classes will be held on the first Tuesday of each month at 10 a.m. here in the West Bethany Chapel. That might get changed at some point in the future, but for right now, 10 a.m. in the West Bethany Chapel, the first of every month. And you can always tune in to WLH. Glenda said she would be putting in the upcoming class topics for each coming month. Okay. And then you can all be dismissed at this point. Please grab a handout on the back table if you did not already. It goes over a lot of the information we went in this presentation, and it's great. Throw it on your fridge, keep it on the nightstand. Every time you think you're getting fish, take a look at this. You can feel free to reach out to me at Tech at Home with any questions or concerns you might have related to phishing or just general device management. I have my phone number up here on the screen. The phone number is listed on the handout on the back table, and we have an email address there that you can reach at any time. At this point, thank you all for coming to the Tech at Home presentation, and you guys have a good rest of your morning. Thank you.